1D. Projection is perception.
Projection is perception. What you see is not what you get. There's a small intersection by my house which I've passed through literally thousands of times. Well, the city installed a new left-hand turn signal where none existed before. And I've made that left turn from the same familiar lane for the last 12 years. I saw the new signal but chose not to pay attention to it. All the other lights turned green except mine. It was still red, but I stepped on the gas anyway, as I've done 1,000 times before. Well, the woman driving through the intersection on her green light hit me when I turned in front of her. Didn't she see me turning? Luckily, I looked up in time to see her heading directly towards me. I hit my brakes, she hit hers, she swerved and scraped my giant front metal SUV bumper. Did I see her? Of course I saw her, unconsciously. But my conscious mind had another plan, go, like it had 1,000 times before. Thank God everyone was safe and there was very little damage. Has this sort of thing ever happened to you? Maybe not with a vehicle, but perhaps watching a movie. You describe the movie to someone else who had already seen it, and they in turn describe it completely different. Or maybe remembering an event from your childhood and retelling the story around a family gathering, and someone says, "That's not how it happened." Or simply listening to the chorus of a song and not remembering that storyline. Maybe some of this has to do with memory, but how we perceive our world, how we interpret it, and how we convert it into usable data internally is the real key. It's called perception. What we perceive and generally believe in our reality to be is nothing more than sensory input from the outside world taken in through our nervous system that has been interpreted by our five senses, what we see, what we hear, feel, smell, and taste. Perception not only creates our experience of the world around us, it determines how we behave within our environment. The word perception comes from the Latin word perceptio and means receiving, collecting, action of taking possession, capture with the mind or senses. Our perceptual process allows us to experience our world. For example, think about all the things you perceive on a daily basis, seeing all the sights and images, the touching of objects or the things that touch your body and skin, the smell of someone's perfume, hearing the sound of music coming from the radio, or the taste of your favorite meal. These things affect our nervous system and help make up our consciousness, our so-called reality. Our perceptual concept of the world we see, hear, and feel enables us to comprehend the world around us as stable, constant, and secure, even though the sensory data, what we take in, is typically incomplete. The overview or process of perception actually begins with the objects in the real world, labeled as distal stimulus or distal object, meaning light, sound, or any physical process which then stimulates the body's sensory organs. These organs then transform all of this input into neural activity, the process called transduction. These neural signals are transmitted from our sensory organs into the brain and ultimately filtered. As we take in this information, around 2 million bits per second, we then delete, distort, and generalize all of this data down to 7 plus or minus 2 bits. A 1956 publication in Psychology Review is one of the most cited papers in psychology, written by cognitive psychologist George A. Miller of Princeton University's Department of Psychology. Miller recognized that most adults can store between 5 items on the low scale and 9 on the highest scale in their short-term memory. Therefore, we lose approximately 99.9% of the initial information our brains begin with. So how much of the actual real world do we experience? Not much at all. Also, I'm certain you thought when you look back at an event unfold, watch a movie, or listen to a conversation, you're taking it all in. We can never truly experience the world around us as it actually exists and happens. These resulting mental re-representations of the distal stimulus is our mental impression of the world we experience. The study of perception gave rise to Gestalt psychology, which was founded by a couple other German thinkers. It focused on how people interpret the world around them. The Gestalt perspective focuses on breaking down mental events and experiences to their smallest elements. Okay, but here's the rub. Because what we perceive in our outside world is merely a fraction of the amount of information we take in, the world we think we're experiencing is not actually the real world we live in. Okay, now I'm about to blow your mind even more. What this means is, as we transcode all this information into usable data for our brain to interpret, we never really experience the world as we see, hear, and feel it. Never. At best, we construct partial images, sounds, and feelings inside of what we pay attention to, the outside. What we are focusing on in the moment of observation, we sort and filter for specific data within those million bits of information that we've collected. So not only are we deleting, distorting, and generalizing all this information coming into our neurology down to a minuscule amount, we then sift through that data to discover what's most important to us, what we can actually use, and what we can disregard. This is processed through the reticular activating system, the RAS, of our brain. The RAS is a portal through which nearly all information enters the brain, with the exception of smells, which go directly into the brain's emotional area. The RAS filters this incoming information and affects what we pay attention to and what is not going to get attention. The primary and most important function of the RAS is the control of our consciousness, the ability to consciously focus our attention on important things. We now understand what the brain does and how it processes all this information coming in through our five senses. We also know we can't ever experience something in the real world as it truly exists without first perceiving it, interpreting it, and prioritizing the data, as our perception of the event is nothing more than a distillation of all this information. So next time someone says to you, "That's not what I said," respond with, "You're right, it's what my brain filtered." Okay, let's move on to chapter 2.